Serin. I'm Director of Listings Development with the Canadian Securities Exchange. We are here for another week of the weekly market update. I am joined by my co-host, Bruce Campbell, with StoneCastle Investment Management. Thank you for joining me, Bruce.
Yeah, I'm glad it's Friday. It's been a wild week in the markets.
You know, you've become a really good part of my week. I always see you on Friday. We talk about what happened. We can dish into everything. And then, we're ready for the weekend. It's a good way for me to end my week off.
Get the chill. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, it was an interesting week out there. We were just chatting in our pre-chat that there was just so much going on. It's hard to tell what was affected by what, but I know that you're going to clarify a bunch of that for us this week. We're going to touch a little bit on US Fed rates. There was some interesting dialogue that happened and the markets reacted pretty quickly. You're going to tell us about that. We're going to talk about OPEC and how they agreed not to increase their output of oil collectively as a group. We're going to talk about that and what that means for the oil prices and some ripple effects that come from that. We're going to get into sector rotation that we're seeing in the markets right now, and we're going to end off with the Safe Banking Act down in the US. So let's get started. Talk to us about what happened with the US rates.
Well, that's been the focus here of this sell-off, really, is that, if you take a look at what's been going on, the 10-year yield in the US and the 10-year bond was, 60 basis points in August, and now it hit 161 basis points, so 1.61% this week. And investors are concerned, oh my, is like, hyperinflation taking over, rates going to, skyrocket up. And for a long duration asset, which is, what technology kind of falls into that category, because, a lot of those are, looking at 2030 earnings, not 2021 earnings, and they're borrowing a lot of money. Well, hey, how's that going to affect my technology company, and should I be selling it? And so the market's, obviously been spooked about this. They were looking for, I guess there's different schools of thought, but the market was looking for some stability from the Fed chair who spoke this week, and they were hoping that he would, come up with some sort of talk about, his cognizant of where rates were, and that, they had to, do something to control it. And he was basically saying, no, we don't need to do that. Like, our job is, keeping the economy rolling and obviously keeping interest rates at a moderate level. And, so the market didn't take that very kindly, and we saw, a fairly significant sell-off, and we continue to see that sell-off in the technology area. So, it was that was certainly one of the big catalysts.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about OPEC. So, for those of you who don't know, OPEC is the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. It's a coalition of countries that are heavy in the oil space. Obviously, its biggest participant is Saudi Arabia. What happened there?
Yeah, so it was actually OPEC plus. So there's some people who aren't members of OPEC, but get lumped in there because of their oil production, which is interesting because Canada is not part of that. But um, what we were expecting, or what the market was expecting, is that with the rise in oil, I mean, it's had, fairly significant move up here, that you would see them come out and say, okay, well, we're going to pump more oil, which would put more oil into the market, which would really affect the price probably in a negative way, knock the price down. But instead, what their stance was is that, we really don't think that the US shale is going to be upstarted anytime soon, which is kind of the marginal producer, or certainly has been. And so as a result, we're happy to just let things go where they're at. And so, on that announcement, oil just basically, took a big move up on the day, and, continues to march up, and it's up again today, which, is moving all the equities in that sector.
So just to bring it down to a really basic level, is that simple supply and demand?
Exactly what it is. Yeah. So, I mean, OPEC, those countries, they curtail their production. They don't just open up the spigots as much as they want to pump. They're trying to control the price by controlling the amount that they sell into the market. And they're trying to affect that supply demand relationship. And so effectively what they've said is that, we don't need to put more supply in. We'll leave things where they're at and move the price up. And, effectively they probably come back into the market with more supply down the road.
Let's talk about a little bit of a sector rotation that you're seeing. Sector rotation really is, just to define it for our listeners, sector rotation is kind of a shift from one sector to another as investors anticipate some kind of economic shift. Is that right?
Yeah, so if you look at sort of a normal market cycle, there's industries that do better and worse in different points of the cycle. And then on top of that, you have investors who are always trying to anticipate, where that next sector that's going to perform is, and they position their money or part of their money in that sector to try to outperform the markets or to make money, right? And so what we've actually been seeing is this is a trend that's been emerging probably for kind of the last like 4 or 5 months now, and that technology really for the last 10 years has been probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest sector in the markets. And what we're starting to see now is that there could actually be the beginnings of this shift where it moves from technology to sort of the commodity based sectors. And then, we talk about oil not really being in favor since 2014. Well, now you're starting to get more interest in oil. A lot of the oil stocks have started to, perform based on the fact that, they had $25 a barrel oil, in the last year, and now it's at $65 a barrel oil. What does that do for their cash flow and for their earnings? And people are getting interested in it again. From a mining perspective, we're seeing base metals. So we've seen the base metals, we've seen the copper, not necessarily the precious metals, but we've seen those metals all performing well, and that again transpires into earnings and earnings cash flow that drives down and then of course pushes the stock price up as people are looking for that. And so we're starting to see the sector rotation in a couple of different ways. So we're seeing that technology kind of give up a little bit of its leadership to commodities. And then we're also seeing a bit of a shift here in the kind of shorter term view of what is in favor from a market capitalization standpoint. So the large cap value-ish kind of companies, which would be banks, in some cases energy, are now starting to see the leadership role as well. So when you look at the markets itself, the index is one thing, but underneath the surface, there's, money always trying to reposition and go in different directions to go to where the opportunity is going to be, not where it is right now.
Well, I guess that's, for the real professionals out there, that's really the upside, for people such as yourself as you analyze the market and perhaps a bit of an indicator of where things might be next, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We spend a lot of time trying to determine that because, the sector has probably, between 70 and 80% bearing on what happens with the stocks in that sector.
Let's end off this week and talk about the Safe Bank Act. Describe what it is first.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the US, if you're in the cannabis business, you still can't, you still have challenges banking. So, in a lot of cases, you can't accept credit cards, you can't accept debit cards, and you have to take cash. And this cash becomes difficult because, a lot of cases, the bank's saying, well, okay, well, where did you get this cash? Because it's federally illegal to sell cannabis. Well, we sold cannabis to get it. And so it creates a lot of challenge. It creates challenge around securities registration and who can invest in these companies and also where they can list. And so there's obviously obviously rumors are rumors, but there's some speculation that next week there could be a standalone banking act, the SAFE Act, in the U.S., which of course would be a fairly significant catalyst for the cannabis sector. So we're kind of watching that and waiting to see what happens, and maybe it turns into nothing, but it could be one of those significant catalysts that really changes the direction of the industry going forward.
Well, and we'll have to do an after hours show one week, Bruce, where you talk about some of your experiences analyzing US companies because you got some great stories. But really, we're talking about a cash business that is in the billions of dollars across the US. It just at some point there needs to be some facilitation for security, stability, and just general protocols for big companies to be able to manage themselves, to be able to use bank. They're using typically these kind of smaller community banks that are, just locally within whatever jurisdiction is legal. And it's just not allowing them to do a lot of the things that some of these big companies can do. I know there's also a bunch of tax stuff that would potentially get changed as well with that. But it at some point you think it has to get there.
I mean, the barn door is open and the horse is out. It's just a function of kind of when it happens, and that could be a year from now or 5 years from now. We don't know, and but it's going to happen. It's at some point in time, and that's why there's so much excitement in the cannabis sector.
Absolutely. Well, there always is, isn't there?
There has been, yeah.
All right. Well, listen, it was a super busy week. There was so much going on in the markets. Any thoughts about next week? Anything to think on as we go into the weekend?
Well, obviously we're really oversold today. We saw the jobs numbers come out in the US, and the market initially sold off, and then it went up, and then it sold off, and it is recovered. Now again, we're still certainly short term oversold, so it's going to create lots of volatility. So if you're a trader, obviously there's going to be lots of ups and downs probably next week as well. If you're an investor, obviously this is one of those times where you can kind of pick your spots and get something that's on sale. Everyone loves to get stuff that's on sale, and this might be that chance.
Yeah, just make sure that you're getting proper advice because sometimes it's not on sale. It actually just is not worth an investment.
That's true.
All right. Well, listen, thank you again, Bruce, for everything. Always love your insights. We will see you next week.
Sounds good.